Christmas Day, sometimes the sadness and the tragedy for some people doesn't stop. But honestly, Christmas is not simply about being merry. It's about being blessed, which is the fundamental message of the Christmas story. Back when Father Pieper was still the king of the Shrine of the Miraculous Medal, he had asked me on this particular day to offer a little bit of a meditation on the Holy Family today. As you know, normally when Christmas does not occur on a Sunday, the following Sunday is normally the day that we celebrate the Holy Family. This year, next Sunday is actually the Feast of the Solemnity of Mary, and the Holy Family Feast falls on this Friday. So I simply would like to offer a little bit of an image and a reflection on the Holy Family today, as Father Pieper put it. As some of you know from the last time that I was here, I am actually not at the university this year teaching. The community has given me a year to do research and writing. And I am spending most of that year, except for some little interruptions, down in Cape May, New Jersey, at the house that we have there. As a result of all of this, I'm spending a lot of time alone. And as part of that little regime, I do generally my own food shopping and my own cooking to the degree that I'm capable of following a recipe from Betty Crocker or Martha Stewart. But the place that I shop, and some of you will know this name, is the Acme. In Cape May, in the middle of the town, there is an Acme. And for those who may go to the Acme, you will probably also know that right now they have this deal going on until January the 3rd. I'm not sure when it started, but it's till January the 3rd, where every time that you buy $10 worth of groceries, you get this Saver stamp. And you can put them into this little panel that they give you at the market. For those of you who are old enough to remember S&H green stamps, it sort of works like that. You save enough of these stamps, and you can get a piece of Faberware. I think for 25 stamps, you can get a 1-quart saucepan. I already got one of those. I got my eyes now set on a roaster pan. You have to collect 120 of these stamps to get the roaster pan. So I'm about 20 away, which means I got to do a lot of shopping between now and January the 3rd. I am lusting for this roaster pan. About 10 days ago, I was in the Acme shopping for food. And since it's every $10, I always make sure that I'm at least 10 cents over the $10 mark. Because if you buy $49.90, you don't get the 5th stamp. So I'll throw a candy bar in. I had gotten a little bit over $50, and I was waiting. Always the checkout person hands you your receipt with the number of stamps that you get. As he handed me the receipt, he did not hand me the stamps. But it was a different checkout person than I usually go to. And instead of just giving them to me, he asked me, "Are you saving these stamps?" It's the winter time in Cape May. There's only one checkout person. I'm looking behind me, and there are about 8 people in line. And when I saw them, I did this quick calculation in my head, and I said to him, "Oh, no, I'm not saving those stamps." Because I didn't want those people to think I just might be poor. Or even worse, miserly. And so I didn't get my stamps. I went home very disappointed. But God is good. So the next night, I was at the ATM machine on the mall by this Stewart's soda restaurant place, and I'm getting out cash to do my shopping. It's dark. I look down at the ground, and lo and behold, there is a strip of 8 Savor stamps. You would have thought I won the Powerball. I was so elated to get these Savor stamps because they put me that much closer to the roaster pan. I want that to be our image of the Holy Family today. I suspect if the Holy Family were around today, they might be shopping at Acme, and they might be looking for their Savor stamps. What can you say about the Holy Family? To be honest with you, if I am going to be honest and truthful, the scriptures tell us very little about the life of the Holy Family. Much that we have imagined is probably fictional and comes from our minds. In the parish where I normally help back in New York, in the sacristy, we have a beautiful picture of the Holy Family. They are in Joseph's carpenter workshop. And they are all looking very wonderful and very calm and very clean and very happy. But the truth of the matter is, if we consult the sacred scriptures, they don't tell us a whole lot about the life of the Holy Family. We can surmise it from the context in which they lived. But the scriptures do nod in certain directions. For example, they tell us that very early in this marriage, this young woman, Mary, was strangely pregnant. So strange was this pregnancy to her husband that Matthew tells us that he was going to divorce her, but to do so quietly, because he was a righteous man. He wanted to do what was right, and at the same time to do the least amount of harm. But an angel intervened. They tell us that 8 days later, when they took this firstborn to be redeemed, that a strange prophet told the mother that this person was destined to impact the rise and the fall of many in Israel, and that a sword would pierce her heart, which I suppose is as close to a broken heart as you're going to come. They tell us that not long after that, because of a king, a local ruler who was pathological, they had to become a refugee family in a foreign country, which should make us all stop and think a little. They tell us that at the age of 12, when they went to the temple, without either asking his parents or consulting them, that the boy, Jesus, decided to stay behind, and to be honest with you, caused them a little bit of anxiety and panic because they didn't know where their son was at first. And that's the last that we ever hear about dear old Saint Joseph, other than one oblique reference to Jesus being the son of a carpenter. They tell us that at the very beginning of Jesus' public ministry, there was an interesting encounter between himself and his mother at a certain wedding feast, where he said to her rather clearly, "What concern of this is mine?" when they ran out of wine. They tell us that at a later point, the family of Jesus, including his mother, came to see him, probably to fetch him, to bring him back home, because they knew that he was getting himself into trouble. And then finally, they tell us that this poor woman stood near the cross of her son, who was being publicly executed by the state, probably in collusion with some of the religious leaders. This is not a Holy Family who knows no ambiguity, who knows only peace. This is a Holy Family that knows something about the vicissitudes of life and its ups and its downs and its pains and its sorrows and its joys. And even in today's gospel, which is drawn from the 10th chapter of St. Matthew, we hear something that's rather strange. Brother is going to hand over brother. Father's going to hand over child. This is not a very pleasant gospel. The reason why it's given to us today, of course, it's the feast of St. Stephen, who was the first martyr. But it does remind us in its own way that, to be honest, sometimes families can be the scene of some pain and some hurt. And sometimes they can also be the scene of wonderful forgiveness and healing. And that if we're going to talk about being a holy family today, we have to honestly recognize that sometimes our families are in disarray, and that they are places and spaces that are badly, at times, in need of healing. And in their own way, Jesus and Mary and Joseph model that for us, not as some impossible goal, but as something that happens in the midst of the messiness of our everyday lives. You know, being down in Cape May, to be honest with you, it's a terrible thing to leave an adult who is aging alone with his own thoughts. And as I'm there alone, I'm aware that I'm getting on in life. I'm 61. And I know it does seem like young to some, but you have those questions that you raise sometimes, like, what have I done with my life? And what do I want to do with it now that I know that I'm closer to death than I am to birth? And there are these funny things going through my head. You know, I hope that I'm getting simpler in the best sense of the term, and humbler. And I hope that I'm getting more honest. I think I am. In the classroom back at St. John's, sometimes when I offer too quick and a pat response to my students and they challenge me, I find myself saying to them, I never thought about it that way. Let me think about that more. Or when I offer too quick and pat a response that even perhaps I'm not convinced of, and they challenge me, I say to them, you know, sometimes I wonder about that too. But one of the things I really find is I am learning once again to drink in the wisdom of children's stories. I've begun to realize that children's stories are probably written not just for children, but for adults, and that they contain a great deal of wisdom. And one of the stories I always go back to at this time of the year is by a woman whose name is Barbara Robinson. She wrote a Christmas story many years ago for children. Some of you may know of it. It's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It's about a family of children, the Herdman children, who get involved at the Christmas pageant of the local church. These children, to be honest with you, are delinquents of sorts. We would say they haven't been very well catechized. But the three boys end up as the wise men. And the matriarch, who's a real delinquent among the children, her name happens to be Imogene Herdman. She ends up being Mary. And at the very end of the Christmas pageant, when it's over and all the people are standing around the vestibule, they start to talk about that there was something special about the pageant that year, and they can't quite figure it out. One woman says, well, for one thing, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a black eye. That was a little bit special. The three wise men didn't bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They brought a ham that they stole from their parents' kitchen, because it seemed to them that a poor family would be hungry, and so they might want a ham instead. But after the whole thing is over, they're standing around, and somebody asked the woman who directed this little play, they said, what's that you got? And she says, it's the ham, she said. They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any candy either, or any of the little Bibles. But Imogene did ask me for a set of the Bible story pictures, and she took out the Mary picture and said that it was exactly right, whatever that means. I think it meant that no matter how she herself was, Imogene liked this idea of the Mary in the picture, all pink and white and pure looking, as if she never washed the dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Eve. But as far as I'm concerned, Mary is always going to look a little bit like Imogene Herdman, sort of nervous and bewildered, but ready to clobber anyone who laid a hand on her baby. And the wise men are always going to be Leroy and his brothers bearing ham. To be honest with you, when I think about the Holy Family, more and more, that's the way I think about the Holy Family today. And we might catch a glimpse of them. They'll be in the Acme. Joseph will be pushing the cart. The baby Jesus will be in that little fold-out chair. And Mary will be counting her stamps. They stand by us, and they watch over us. And they're a model because they remind us of what it means to love and to forgive in our families. And they're holy, not because everything always went well with them, but because, to use that beautiful phrase from St. John's Gospel concerning Mary at the foot of the cross, they always stand by us. They always stand near us. We are never alone.